to Ben and Beth Taylor from Antioch Church in Llanelli, and it's brilliant to have you guys with us this morning. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know you've got a busy family life, you've got a busy church life, you also run the centre as a business. So it's, really good to have you guys with us today.
Morning, it's good to be here.
Good to be here.
Good, thank you. How tough is it at the moment for you guys? Because I kind of tee up what you do and make it sound like it's wonderful, but how tough is it?
Do you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
I think it's tough for everyone at the moment, but for us specifically, we lead the church. We have a team, which is amazing. The team all help as well, but our centre is actually a business as well. So like lots of you guys, you will have lost income from your business. So we had to shut everything down, and we've just been focusing on our food bank. So that's been our main focus, and the church as well.
Yeah, and we have a little boy who keeps us very busy as well. And we have a little bit of childcare, but when you're trying to juggle a young child, a church, a business, and everything that comes with that, it is quite tough at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, God is good.
And we moved in with Ben's parents.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
Yes.
So it's all happening, and it all comes at once. It's not easy. I know toddlers are hard work anyway, and trying to juggle all that with business and church, and do you find some time for yourselves as well, guys?
Yeah, we do. We try and you have to be intentional, I think, in this season. There's lots of draws, lots of pulls. There's things we could do or should do. But I think we're trying to be intentional in connecting with each other. But also as a family, I think that's one of the hardest things about being involved in church sometimes, is making sure your family is priority. So yeah, we're very intentional about that, particularly in the evenings when our little one's gone to bed. So yeah, if you want to add.
Yeah, I think in terms of connecting with God, I don't know whether you guys might have found this. Some of you might be finding it really easy at the moment to connect with God, but others of you might be finding it really difficult because you're in the house, maybe you've got children around or family, and trying to find that space where you can connect with God in the time and make that a priority. That's difficult. So we're just learning in that, and some days we're able to connect with God more than others, but I think it's a journey, isn't it? And we're all on a journey together.
Yeah. So there's obviously there's a massive amount of content out there for people to dip into. Do you, obviously you have to create things for the people you lead and for for the church there, but are you able to access other things? Are there spaces you're going to that you're finding helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a few things that we've dipped in. There's so much out there, like you said, that you have to be quite disciplined actually, and intentional about what you're going to engage with. I think for me, I found a chap called Michael Todd, an American pastor, really helpful this season, really good guy, yeah. And another pastor called Craig Rochelle. I listened to his leadership podcast. I was doing that before the lockdown, but I found it really helpful in this season, because we are still leading, so we still need to. I think one of the hardest things that Craig Rochelle says is it's hard, really difficult to lead yourself, but it's so important in this kind of season to do that.
Yeah, I've just been reading Mike Todd's book, Relationship Goals. Definitely recommend it. You don't have to be in a relationship to read it. It talks about relationships in terms of friendship and marriage and lots of different areas, but I find it really challenging as well. So I would recommend getting that book if you can.
Yeah. One of the things I know about both of you guys is that you are intelligent, creative people, and you could be doing, jobs in the secular world, earning good money, all those sort of things that are very attractive. So why the ministry, guys? Why are you doing this to yourselves?
I think God knows, doesn't he?
Yeah, I think it's funny how God uses your life to prepare you, and there's lots of things that I've done historically. I used to work, I went to university, did a youth and community work degree, and I did some work in the substance misuse field, helping people who struggle with addictions. And at the time, I wasn't aware of why I was doing that sort of stuff. But I think over time, God just opened the door to lead the church. And it's funny how once he did that, all of that stuff kind of made sense. The skills you learn, the things that you pick up over the years, I think are really helpful in leadership and leading a church. As to why we do it, we had to be called, really. I think, that gives you the grace. I had to hear from God, and Beth did as well. You really need to hear his voice in it. Otherwise, like you said, it's very, very difficult. And I would definitely be doing something else, I think.
I think for me, I did a degree in photography, so I was on a completely different path. And then realised Ben was the love of my life, and he'd been sat right in front of me all this time. And so I think when we got married, we were invited onto the leadership team. And I've always been involved in church youth work, different things. But when we were on the team, you get to see a bit more in depth. I'm a pastor's kid, so I've always seen a little bit about what goes on in the background, but actually being involved in it. And I think God just really spoke to us about leading the church. It was the last thing I wanted to do, so I knew it was God.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and he was quite clear about that, and then we just went on a journey from there.
That's great. Brilliant. And I mean, there's been a big shift in, I guess, in the last generation of leaders from, because I was a pastor's kid as well. And my dad pretty much did everything in church. And, he had a few people around him that did other stuff. But over time, what we've seen is probably what I think is more of a biblical model, where we see everybody involved in an expression of ministry, and that's not just within the four walls of church. That's a tiny part of our life at the end of the day, a few hours in the four walls of church. And how have you nurtured that in your own lives, and then nurtured that in the folk that you lead as well?
Good question. I think for us, like you said, church is a small part of it. A big part in some respects, but a small part. But actually, the way that the building's set up for us, we've intentionally, there's a whole business model attached, but all of that we do, we have our ethos is church alive for our community, nation, and nations. And I think for us, it's thinking about that, how we reach those people that are close to us, on our doorstep, the nation of Wales, and then further afield. But one of the major ways, certainly in this season, that we've seen that connection is through the food bank. We run a local food bank, and our heart is to support and help people, and I think to show kindness and compassion in this season, and to really kind of introduce people to Jesus, if you like, because if this season, I think, has taught us anything, it's that church is just a building. Historically, it's just a building. It's about going out there and church carrying the kingdom and the presence of God wherever they go. And I think for us, we're on a journey in that, I think, and we don't have all the answers, but this has almost forced that, if you like, in an accelerated way. And we're thinking about ways in which we can connect with our community. But also not taking the responsibility and the pressure as well, allowing God to move in this season. We haven't got to fix everything or solve everything, but allowing God to move and just partnering with what he's saying.
I think as a church, we've always been cross-generational as well. It's really important that our young people feel comfortable speaking with people of any age. And I think if you're being raised up by someone, you need to be raising someone else up at the same time. So just encouraging people that everyone's got a ministry. Where are you? Who's around you? You can be talking about Jesus to anyone. And I just think that's really important. So we've seen some of the joys of that by getting one of our young people spoke on Zoom the other day. And it brought me such joy just seeing her step out into her fullness of what God has for her. So it's trying to see that happen within our community as well as within our church.
Yeah. That's great. And what we want to see is people flourish, isn't it? And because obviously you know, not just one or two of us are in God's plan. All of us are in God's plan, and you know, God wants to use those things that, you know, that are small, people that are insignificant, places that nobody else wants. God seems to sort of like zoom in on the insignificant, and if anything, you know, our town and our even our nation, I guess, can feel like an insignificant place. But I think God's putting his finger on Wales again, and on the people of Wales, and that's all of us, not just leadership, you know.
I think, yeah, one of the things we really felt in this season actually was, and a journey went on with our congregation, was a number of them are a little bit older, maybe shielding and struggling with that isolation. And a few of them said, well, all we really feel we can do is pray. And we were just, in a sense, it was quite challenging in the sense, well, what do you mean all we can do? That's actually quite powerful and significant. And so one of the things we've been trying to do in this season is encourage our congregation and our community to understand that actually prayer is really powerful. And we've seen huge favour in our food bank in terms of some grant applications we've done, and so just the way we've been able to gather and resource the food bank. And I really believe it's because our community is with us standing in prayer. So they may not be delivering the food bank, but they're just as much part of it, praying in the background, being faithful with their prayers. And actually, you know, if we want to see a revival, if we want to see things change in God's kingdom, I think it comes from prayer, doesn't it? And people praying faithfully every day into these situations. And we've been really encouraged by that, the power of prayer in this season.
Yeah, I think it's so important to encourage people to pray for their family, but also to pray for their leaders and the leaders in our nation. And prayer is so powerful, and it always makes me smile when someone says, all I can do is pray. I'm just like, well, isn't that amazing that you can pray? And yeah, so I think anyone can think of one or two people that they could be praying for right now, one or two situations that they can be praying about, and just know that your prayers are powerful, and actually your prayers are changing lives. So if all you can do is pray, then that's amazing. Get praying.
Yeah. And of course, the more prayer, the deeper the foundation. The deeper the foundation, the more we can build.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, I think part of, I guess, the whole COVID experience has been the renaissance in prayer. And we need a revival in prayer. You know, personally, I've said this many times in Antigua, and, you know, I find prayer really hard. I find it really difficult. But, you know, when we really want to see change, we have to do the hard yards, you know, and I think it's great if we can see the multiplication of prayer, and if people feel it's insignificant, and maybe we feel insignificant, but put it all together, and it's a big move of God.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think we'll see our community transformed through prayer, definitely.
Yeah. If there's one thing that you wanted to highlight about the COVID season, what's the one thing that you felt God has been saying to you, the strongest thing that God has said to you?
It's really difficult because there's so many things, but I think, for me, it would be just from a personal perspective now, which obviously carries through to leadership as well. But for me, I've had lots of time to ask, do I believe what I say I believe in this season? I think obviously it's been very challenging, but I think God has really met me personally, and I think lots of other people, in terms of what does this mean for you? How does this play out? What does my love for you mean for you, in terms of how you respond in this season? And I think I felt particularly challenged as church. You know, there's crisis all around us. There's people really deep in fear and worry and anxiety, and understandably. But I really felt God say to us that in this season that we're Christians, we believe in God, we're new creations, and actually we carry His presence and His peace. And I really felt that. I think that's the thing I've pulled from this season, is that we have to be ready to to bring God's solution, God's answer to these things, and to partner with Him, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what God's been speaking to me about is how He wants a relationship with us. And I think if you think of relationship, you have to put a lot of work and effort into having a happy relationship. But it's the same with God. I think we can sometimes put our relationship with Him on the back burner. And through this time of being stuck inside, we have had a lot of time. But I think for many, I know for myself, we can sometimes avoid spending time with God. And He's calling us into spending time in His presence. I think through spending time in His presence and resting in His presence and discovering more about God's character, that's how we'll move forward. I think it would be quite easy to become stagnant and just stay still and not progress in our relationship with Him. But He cares for us, and it talks about that in the Bible everywhere, how much He cares and loves for us. But do we care enough to journey with Him? That's what He's been speaking to me about.
Yeah.
And I know for myself I do, and I don't want to be in this place in a year's time. I want to be much further along in my relationship with God, definitely.
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? There's letters that are 2,000 years old, and I'm thinking about that letter that Jesus Himself wrote to the church in Ephesus, and He says, "You've lost your first love," and in a sense, there's an opportunity to kind of receive that letter in COVID again, but not make the mistake that Ephesus did. Ephesus doesn't exist anymore. There's nothing there. There's no church there. There's no one lives there. There's nothing there. And in a sense that maybe if they'd caught something of like what you were just saying there, Beth, this opportunity to just really just hang out with Jesus, and just get to know Him, or rekindle the first love that we all experienced when we gave our heart to Jesus. But over time it kind of wanes, doesn't it? Because we get caught up in the business of life. And Jesus just wants that first love experience to be rekindled, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, He wants to be your first priority.
Yes. Yeah. He's a zealous God, jealous for us, jealous for us, which is lovely, isn't it? I mean, like in a way that He just wants to hang out with us.
Yeah.
And this season's been a great opportunity for that, hasn't it? In terms of things being stripped away, it's uncomfortable and quite challenging, but I think it has been an opportunity. Similar to what I was saying earlier, but for us to ask those questions. What does this look like for me? Is God my priority? I say He is, but is He? And I think we all have a lot of head knowledge. We know the Bible, we know what it says, but sometimes it needs to go a little bit deeper, and translate into our heart as well, and how we live out, and we are changed because of the truth in it, and this season's been an opportunity to really dig in with our relationship with God.
I think there's many of us who might be feeling, I've missed an opportunity here. But like I was saying to our church on Sunday, it's a new day. Like every day is a new day, and every day is a new opportunity to make Him your priority from the moment you wake up, the moment you go to sleep. Putting Him at the forefront. I think you'll find your relationships, your happiness, the joy that maybe you might be missing in this time will come through His presence and getting to know God more.
Yeah. Excellent. So COVID has had a profound effect. I think it's definitely uncharted waters. I don't think anyone's ever been here before that's living. I think the war was something very different, and this has shaped each one of us differently. It's shaped our nation differently, and it's shaping the nation. So what would you see on the horizon for our community?
Really good question.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
I think, like I was saying about relationship, our relationship with our neighbours and with our friends and family, like it's all shifted a bit, isn't it? Because we've been apart for so long. But God is calling us into relationship with each other, and I think more intentional relationship. because he wants to transform our community. But I think the one thing that could come against it is fear. And I think we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in a week's time, in a month's time, but trusting in God, who is love, and perfect love casts out all fear. I think through that, we will see our community transformed. I think the one thing that COVID has done, we can become quite insular as a community, as a person. Might just be thinking about us, but we actually need to be outward looking. We need to be thinking about, how is this affecting other people? Is there a lack that I can fill? Simply say, like with the food bank, do they need food? Well, I've got more than enough in my cupboard to give. Or does someone need some time? Well, I've got time, I can make that phone call. But I think it'll be more of that within our community.
Yeah, I think for me, I think it would be I think, COVID-19 stuff, I think, has softened the nation, the hearts of people. I think, whatever you believed about Brexit, it caused a lot of division and upset. And I think this season, I think, has softened people's hearts. I think there's been some restoration, some healing, even between governments and across people, but I think, and families. But I think we're going to see that on a deeper level as things move forward. Opportunities, certainly, to bring peace and to bring compassion and healing and restoration into situations. And I think that's what I hope happens moving forward. And I do believe God's in that, but I think we need to be listening to him and constantly out of relationship, following his voice and his steps in that. But I'm quite optimistic of what the future holds.
Yeah. That's great.
I think there is quite a lot of grief. I was just saying, I think there's quite a lot of grief that's been, loads of people have lost people, and I think it's been sensitive to that in this time, not trying to skip over. I think everyone has lost something, whether it's a job or a friend or family. I think allowing yourselves to grieve before moving forward, but not staying in the grief, if that makes sense. I think that would be a key. Try not to shut people down, trying to listen to each other and really pray for each other as well.
Yeah, that's great. Great answer. Thank you. The last question then, I'll let you guys go because I know you're busy, but without a vision, people perish. And I know you guys, I've known you for quite some time, and I know you've got an immense amount of vision. But as I say, COVID's changed us. So what's the big dream now?
I think for us, it's to see this community transformed and to introduce people to Jesus, and almost just a deeper understanding of that. I think to see the church grow, but not for the sake of bums on seats, for actually, to see the church mobilize and get out there and change. I see transformation, I think. I see God's kingdom come, his principles, his way of doing things, and partnering with that more and more. So that's our hope for Llanelli. I hope we see that wider as well. But I'm just thankful it's not dependent on me. It's all done by the power of God. And through the power of the Holy Spirit.
I think definitely transformation, that's something that's been on our hearts for a long time. And at the beginning of the year, I had a vision about Llanelli and people turning to God and their lives being transformed and their situations being transformed. And I am definitely praying that in. Would love to see revival happen in our community. It's amazing that all the church leaders, like, we're friends, we chat to each other, we encourage each other. And so seeing our community transformed, I don't really care in terms of where people will go in terms of church, but I want to see everyone in relationship with Jesus. And I can see that pouring out of Llanelli and into the nation of Wales and across the other nations. So it's definitely transformation by connection with Jesus.
Brilliant. I think we'd be with you shoulder to shoulder on that as a local church too. I think the whole kind of thought that we want to fill up a room, is, I mean, that's nice, and but if we really want to see the impact of Jesus in our community, we need to fill the town, not just a room, and so that means that they don't come in, we go out. And that's happened overnight, I guess, from March onwards. We are out there. We can do what we do, not in our own strength, as you mentioned earlier, Ben, but it's not about us, it's all about Jesus, and him just wanting to use us, in the small things, in the insignificant things they might feel like, but in God's hands they become very, very powerful. It's just great to hang out with you guys. I love doing life with you. We love doing church with you guys. You're loved and appreciated. So love to you both. Love to the church there in Antioch, and we'll speak soon.
And to you guys as well. Thanks for all you're doing.
Love doing relationship with you guys.
With you guys, and the church is phenomenal. So
and it's absolutely amazing.
Thank you for listening.